Angie, and you're watching Dontaesboxingnation.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the former IBF Junior Middleweight World Champion and the current hard-hitting, undefeated, reigning and defending WBC Middleweight Champion of the World, introducing Jamal Hitman Charlo.
I think that fight will happen in the future. Canelo will fight anyway. We have our plan. We know what we want to do. I think Canelo and Charlo will be a terrific fight in the future.
And Oscar, how's Canelo against the likes of Jacobs, Andre, and Charlo? How's he going to beat these 6-foot athletic middleweights when Canelo's 5'9"? You know,
we'll see when he fights them. I mean, and mark my words, he will fight them. I mean, Canelo wants to be great. He wants to be great. So in order to be great, you have to fight the likes of the Jacobs, the Charlos. Everybody depends on that.
Dontaesboxingnation, what's going on, guys? You have heard me say for years on this channel that I believe Oscar De La Hoya, he is frustrated and he really wants to see Canelo Alvarez fight all of these guys, Andre, Charlo, and whoever else the fans are asking for Canelo to fight. Because Oscar De La Hoya, when he was fighting, Oscar, he fought everyone. Oscar, he fought the Andrades. He fought the Charlos. He fought them all. Pernell Whitaker, Ike Corte, Felix Trinidad, Shane Mosley, Bernard Hopkins, and the list just goes on and on and on. Now today, you have so many Mexican fighters that are avoiding undefeated, dangerous black fighters. From Oscar Valdez, who's been avoiding Shakur Stevenson for now almost 2 years. Jaime Munguia is the mandatory for Charlo and Andrade at middleweight, and he doesn't want to fight for a title against these guys. Canelo Alvarez has been avoiding Andrade and Charlo for over 6 years now. Ryan Garcia promised us he was going to fight Tank Davis, pulled out of the fight. Then we find out he's Devin Haney's mandatory. He pulls out of the mandatory position to try to fight another contender. Oscar De La Hoya, he wasn't afraid to get in the ring with any undefeated black fighters. He wasn't afraid to get in the ring with any undefeated Mexican fighters. Whoever wanted to challenge Oscar, he took the challenge. Now, don't get me wrong. There were some fights that Oscar avoided. But if we're comparing Oscar to Canelo Alvarez, he fought 10 times more dangerous opponents than Canelo has. So like I was telling you guys before, I've always felt that Oscar De La Hoya, he's going to come out and tell people the truth when it comes to the Andre situation, when it comes to the Jamal Charlo situation. And that day has come, guys. Believe it or not, Oscar De La Hoya actually responded to someone on a Canelo post on IG. And this is what he said about Canelo Alvarez. He said, please, this guy does everything wrong. Head up when he throws hooks, on his heels, flat-footed, what else? Oh, he avoids Charlo. Now, Oscar, he tagged the wrong Charlo in the post, but that's an easy mix-up. Now, guys, when I read this post, the first thing I noticed was someone responding to what Oscar De La Hoya said. And this guy says, damn, no loyalty in the sport. #hater. See, guys, these are more comments that completely corroborate everything you hear me say right here. These Canelo fans are admitting, and I'm not even going to say Canelo fans, these race fans. These race fans, they are admitting it has never been about the truth. It has always been about being loyal. And being loyal means you never tell the truth if it's going to make our Canelo look bad. That's exactly what they mean, or any other fighters that they support. But getting back to what Oscar De La Hoya said in that clip I played for you, it's so ironic because if you listen to what Oscar said back then, remember, this is when he was promoting Canelo Alvarez. If you think about it, he pretty much said the same thing then that he's saying now. He was putting pressure on Canelo to take the fight. He said, look, man, Canelo wants to be great. The only way you're going to be great is if you fight the likes of the Jacobs, the Charlos, the Andrades, right? Now, granted, he fought Jacobs, but if you're going to fight, if you got 3 black fighters in your division, why would you only fight the black fighter who has 2 losses and has been knocked out before? Why would you exclude the 2 undefeated ones? And we have the answer. Because even Canelo Alvarez's own trainer, he called Charlo a spectacular fighter. He said he's spectacular, he's tall, he's strong, and he knows how to box very well. Coincidentally, this is almost the same thing that David Benavidez's father and trainer, Jose Benavidez Sr. said. Jose said, man, I love his style, man. I love his style. He has power, good jab. He's tall. And he said that he would be a much more difficult fight. He didn't even say much more. He said that would be his son, David Benavidez's toughest fight. He said, by way of contrast, Canelo would be the easiest fight. Charlo would be the most difficult, right? So you have Jose Benavidez Sr. pretty much saying the same thing that Canelo Alvarez's trainer said about Charlo. And that's the reason why Oscar De La Hoya said, in order to be great, you have to take on these fights. Oscar De La Hoya, he practiced what he preaches. That's not called hate. That's telling Canelo Alvarez, if I was able to do it, you should be able to do it too. Win, lose, or draw. That's not hating, guys. Hating is when you go on someone's Instagram account, look up their family pictures or pictures of that fighter and post racial slurs like they're doing to black fighters today and they did with Floyd Mayweather. Hating is when you try to claim that Canelo is doing the same things that Floyd Mayweather did, but yet you didn't like Floyd Mayweather when he was doing the quote-unquote same thing. What does that mean? If you believe they were doing the same thing, then why weren't you defending and praising Floyd Mayweather like you're doing Canelo Alvarez today? If they were doing the same thing, then the only difference between the two is one is black and the other is not, right? Did you guys know that when Canelo Alvarez beat Edeslani Lara, some Canelo Alvarez fans got a hold of Edeslani Lara's wife's phone number? And I know this story because I was told by Edeslani Lara's people directly that this happened. These racist-ass Canelo fans, they started to call up Lara's wife. And by the way, she was pregnant at the time. I believe this was like her 2nd or 3rd baby she was having with Lara. She was pregnant at the time. They call her up, calling her all type of nigger lovers, saying her baby is half monkey, etc., etc. Oh, they were going in. And I'm talking about a lot of Mexican Canelo Alvarez fans were doing this. That's what you call hate. And that's why when racists go out and commit a crime, it's called a hate crime. Now, I could spend the next 10 minutes giving examples like that, but I think you guys get the point. For someone to say you must be hating on Canelo Alvarez if you want him to fight a Demetrius Andrade or a Jamal Charlo, these fans don't even realize what it really sounds like you're saying is you don't have confidence that he could win that fight. And you're basically saying you just want to see Canelo lose because you know that's a dangerous fight that he could possibly lose. I mean, that's basically what they're saying. Matter of fact, Canelo fans have actually said that in my comment section before. They said those words. They said, oh, you just want to see him lose. They don't even realize they be telling on themselves when they talk. I knew all along this was the way Oscar De La Hoya felt. I think that this is the reason why. Do you guys remember a couple years back, out of nowhere, Canelo Alvarez just started dissing Oscar De La Hoya? There was nothing that Oscar De La Hoya had said about Canelo in public. Canelo just came out of nowhere. He started talking about how Oscar was never loyal and Oscar is this and Oscar is that. I made a video about Canelo Alvarez saying this. And I told you guys that I truly believe the reason why they're riffing, the reason why they're beefing right now is because Oscar, behind closed doors, is trying to force Canelo to fight Charlo. He's trying to force him to fight Andre, and Canelo never wanted to fight them. And that's what caused the beef between them. That's what caused the tension. And now here Oscar De La Hoya is saying that Canelo Alvarez is avoiding Charlo and talking about his flaws in the ring. And for any of you real boxing fans out there, if you ever run across a Canelo fan and he's saying to you, oh, well, you know, Charlo, he turned down the Canelo fight. He turned down the Charlo fight. All you have to do is ask him a simple question. How is it possible a mandatory turns down a title shot and then ends up with the champion's belt? When have you ever heard this happening before in boxing? It's never happened before because it doesn't make sense. Hell, if that's the case, Ryan Garcia, he should right now have Devin Haney's belt. Because didn't Ryan Garcia turn down his mandatory spot? He turned down a title shot. So why doesn't he have Devin Haney's belt? Why doesn't Jaime Munguia have Andre's belt or Charlo's belt? Jaime Munguia is mandatory for both of those guys. Sean Porter. How come Sean Porter doesn't have Terrence Crawford's belt right now? Sean Porter was Terrence Crawford's mandatory. Now Sean Porter is no longer the mandatory. Did you guys know Canelo Alvarez was Demetrius Andrade's mandatory when they were both fighting at 154? And he still didn't fight him, obviously. So once again, how come Canelo didn't end up with Andrade's belt? The only time this has ever happened is when Canelo was the champion. You know, I truly believe, though, there's still a good chance that we will get a Canelo versus Charlo or even Andre fight, only for the simple reason that the walls are really closing in. And I hear some of you guys saying, oh, well, you know, you've been saying the walls been closing in for a long time. Yeah, the walls have been closing in for a long time. Canelo is very slippery, man. Canelo is very, very evasive. Right when you think you got him cornered in the house, he finds some type of tunnel to get up out of there. Right when you think Canelo Alvarez, he has no other choice but to face a good, dangerous opponent, assuming he gets past Caleb Plant or Caleb Plant doesn't take the fight. You look at the options. Who else is there for Canelo Alvarez to fight? You got David Benavidez, Charlo, and Andre, who both said they'll come to 168 to fight Canelo Alvarez. You would think in a scenario like that, Canelo would kind of be forced to fight these guys. But right when you think you got him cornered, he pulls another white European fighter out of his ass that we ain't never heard of. You know, but the thing is, if Canelo is not going to fight anybody but European fighters, why doesn't he at least fight the most dangerous European fighters? Like Dmitry Bivol, like Arthur Beterbiev, fighters like that, real dangerous European fighters, right? So at the end of the day, I'm happy that Oscar De La Hoya is finally coming out, telling the truth. All Oscar De La Hoya is telling Canelo Alvarez to do is the same thing that Oscar De La Hoya did. That's all he's asking. And all these other great, legendary Mexican fighters, they're saying the same things. They're criticizing Canelo Alvarez because they want him to do the same things that they did in their career. And Canelo is not doing it. Since Canelo fans love to compare Canelo Alvarez to Floyd Mayweather, let me say this. By way of contrast, Floyd Mayweather, he made a career fighting and beating Mexican fighters on Mexican holidays, right? Now, you would think that with Canelo Alvarez having a country on his back, wouldn't you think he would want to avenge all of those Mexican fighters that lost to a fighter from a different country to show that Mexico is number one, right? Why wouldn't Canelo want to really go after all of the most dangerous black fighters. Instead, he's doing the opposite. He's avoiding them. Oh, don't get me wrong. Canelo will fight a black fighter. He'll just fight a black fighter who either fights at 147 or he'll fight a black fighter who's already been knocked out before and has 2 losses on his record, like Danny Jacobs. Oh, he'll fight the James Kirklands, but he won't fight the dangerous ones. The ones that his own trainer is calling spectacular. He won't fight the spectacular ones, right? But see, once again, when it came to Floyd Mayweather, he went after all of the most dangerous Mexican fighters. Think about this. Floyd Mayweather fought Canelo Alvarez. Floyd was an old, small man fighting against this huge 23-year-old, a man that was 15 to 20 pounds bigger than him. Canelo had every single advantage over Floyd Mayweather, and that was one of Floyd's best performances at age 36. He was closer to 37, actually. And that was like one of his best performances of his career. Guys, can you imagine? Would Canelo ever do that? Since you're saying that Canelo is always trying to do the same things that Floyd does. If Jamal Charlo, David Benavidez, and Demetrius Andrade were natural light heavyweights, right? And I'm talking about they rehydrated all the way up to 200 plus pounds. And if Canelo Alvarez were to get in the ring and fight any of these guys, they're all going to outweigh him 15 to 20 pounds. Guys, this is equivalent to what Floyd Mayweather did with Canelo Alvarez. Do you think Canelo would ever take a challenge like that? The obvious answer is a hell to the no. Because Canelo won't even take that challenge right now when they're in the same weight class. Canelo didn't take that challenge when they were at 154, when they were at 160, and he's still not taking the challenge. So who knows, man? Maybe Canelo, he just wants to go down in history as the greatest fighter of all time against European fighters. That's even going to be hard for him to do. Because truth be told, he ain't even fighting the greatest European fighters. And when I say greatest, I mean none of them were ever considered pound for pound the best. You know, it's funny because some Mexican guy, he sent me a comment. He said, oh, you're talking about him fighting European fighters, but what about Andre Ward? Andre Ward, he fought a lot of European fighters. The difference is Andre Ward was fighting guys that were considered pound for pound the best fighters in the world. Carl Froch, Miguel Kessler, Sergey Kovalev. When Andre Ward fought Sergey Kovalev, Kovalev was considered pound for pound the best fighter in the world by some boxing websites. And remember, Ward had to move up in weight to fight him. When Andre Ward entered the Super 6 tournament, did you guys know that Andre Ward was considered a heavy underdog in that tournament? Because at the time, Carl Froch and Miguel Kessler were both considered pound for pound some of the best fighters in the world. I'm talking about top 10. But I believe Carl Froch was top 5, right? Both of these guys, they were the favorites to win that tournament because Andre Ward was young in his career, right? They gave Ward no chance of winning that fight. I remember watching the polls for that. And everyone kept saying, who's going to win this tournament? Everyone kept saying, it's either Carl Froch or Miguel Kessler. Can you name me one European fighter that Canelo Alvarez beat that was considered top 10 pound for pound, one of the best fighters in the world? Absolutely not. And not only did Andre Ward beat the best European fighters that were considered the best in the world, he was also beating the best black fighters at the same time. Something that Canelo Alvarez is not doing. Let's see if he gets cornered to fighting one of these dangerous fighters in the near future. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
Hello, my name is Dominic. I just got my procedure done here at ScalpCarolinas. I was recommended by Dontaesboxingnation, and it's real. You know, here's the results. The brother out here, Brother Enoch, is real. and it's a very, very, very good recommendation. I recommend it. 4 hours, you in, you out, and it's the rest of your life.
So if anyone in the world wants this hookup, make sure you contact my man Anak at 704-499-3471 and make sure to follow him on Instagram. Now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Deki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodeki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.